Agi Keramidas. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Aneta, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation.
I was looking forward to it. I was so excited when I saw you on the calendar because you and I had an opportunity to speak on your podcast. I don't even know, maybe a little while ago. I know the episode's out there currently.
It was, I think, a couple of months ago. It was
Yeah.
episode 418. So, on Personal Development Mastery podcast. And it was a wonderful conversation, which, as a matter of fact, I was listening to earlier today to reconnect and remember what we had talked about at that time.
Yeah, and I was so excited to have you on because when you're a guest and so much of the conversation is focused on the guest, but I wanted to know so much more about you too. And so I get to return the favor today. And for those that aren't that familiar with you, I shared some things in your bio at the beginning of the episode, but tell me a little bit more about how you came to be in this moment right now. Because I know that you started off on a different trajectory in life, and through a series of different events, you now have a podcast, you're an author, you help so many other people, you're on your personal growth and development plan and journey yourself. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, thank you. So the big transition which you hinted was like I started my life up to about 35 as a dentist in Greece, which was my home country. Then I moved to the UK on my own, leaving everything I knew and familiar behind me, friends, family, dental practice, fiancé, etc. I moved to the UK because it was my calling. I felt drawn to that. I carried on doing dentistry. I did a master's degree in dentistry, and the transition happened after I had finished that, where I discovered personal development because of my own lack of fulfillment at that time. Because I was on the outside, I felt, and you are familiar with it, we talked about this sense of having the external success or factors, but inside feeling unsatisfied, unfulfilled, or for me it was directionless. And that led me to personal development. That one thing led to the other, and then I started a podcast. And then 6.5 years, close to 7 years later, here we are speaking today.
Amazing. And your podcast is very well known. It's in the top 1.5% of all global podcasts, which is amazing because there are
Thank you.
over 3 million podcasts now.
Thank you.
And I'm sure when you started, there were fewer, but now there's so many podcasts available.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I got the early wave of podcasting. I started in 2018, so it accumulates over time with experience. Yeah, thank you very much. My podcast is a product of, I was about to say passion, but I have gone past that stage. Yes, it was passion, it still is, but now that has been superseded by a sense of mission or purpose.
And what is that mission or purpose for your podcast?
It's a great
Mm.
question. So, for me, as Agi, as a person living this life, it is to fulfill through my abilities and my capacity. My role is informing, influencing. These are weak words. Let me find a better word. Inspiring, that's
Mhm.
a better word. Inspiring my audience, in this particular case, since we're talking about the podcast, inspiring my audience to take some kind of action that will allow them to improve their life. And it can be a small thing, it can be a big thing. It doesn't really matter. What matters is to implement the knowledge that you hear on the podcast. Pick something and try it out. And if it sticks, you might change your life over a period of time just by doing one simple thing or picking up the phone and making a phone call. I probably digressed a little bit there, but my intention rather than mission now with the podcast is to contribute to the people who are in resonance with what I have to say or what my guests have to say, because it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But the people who resonate with what's been said there, my intention is for them to do something with this. And yeah, we are in a stage of awakening of consciousness, and I think this is my, let's say, contribution to what is happening with humanity now. Not knowledge, inspiration, action, transformation.
I love the words that you've used because they matter. And sometimes we can't find words that are significant enough to really convey what we're feeling. But I know that action is super important to you. And so you actually have a book that you also has the word action in it. It's 88 actionable insights for life. When
Yes.
did you write your book? And tell us just a little bit more about the book.
Yes, thank you. I published it end of 2023. I started writing it 2 years before then. The reason why I started writing, and I will put it, Aneta, in a very simple way that I'm sure that you will understand completely, and I hope that if you're listening now, you also understand it. It was given to me, it was assigned to me. I felt like, oh, this is what I need to do. I wrote about 90% of it in 2 months, and then it took me another 2 years to reach the stage of publication. And that's a different story altogether. But the book is 88, as you said, actionable insights for life. And it is exactly the principle I was explaining earlier. It has to be actionable. You have to be able to do something with it. It's not theory. Theory is good to some extent. And I've made that mistake in my own personal development journey early on. I would read the books and do nothing with it, just accumulate knowledge, and things were not really changing. Then, when I started doing the exercises in the book and doing what the book was suggesting to do, then I realized how growth is.
It's so true. We consume so much and we might retain some of that knowledge, we may even talk about it, but really through the action, through the doing, do we see the change in our own personal life? And so I want to go back to this moment that
Mm.
you decided that you wanted to leave the dentistry career and do something different. So, how long were you thinking about leaving before you actually did it?
Let me start by saying it was not, I don't want to get the wrong impression, it was not like a sudden decision that one day was working and then it didn't. It has been a gradual process of slowly cutting down from 5 days to four to three to two and so on to one. So this has taken a long time. I will say now I'm trying to think the way that you say it. 6 years, 5 years. As I said, a gradual decline. And there are many reasons for that, which we can go into them if you want or not. But yeah, it was not a sudden thing. Oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And next day I stopped. But anyway, to answer your question in a different way, the decisions happened and then I took the actions to cut down. When I finished my master's degree in aesthetic and dentistry, having spent 2 years of my life studying and a considerable amount of money for the course, and I found myself at the end of those 2 years, rather than motivated, I had learned so many great things I was about to implement into practice, and I found myself not wanting to do any of that. And that really led me, first of all, to start asking questions that I had not asked before. For example, why is this happening? Or initially, my first question is, what is wrong with me? Because I have just achieved this great thing. I took a master's degree with distinction in not my native language, and I feel empty and I feel I don't want to do any of that. What's wrong with me? So it took me a while to reframe that question and to ask the right questions. And then I simply realized that dentistry had served its purpose for my life, and I had also served my patients and whatever else is involved with the practice of dentistry. However, I realized that unlike in my generation, or especially when in Greece, I suppose it's not much different in USA because it's not in England either. If you study and have a career, and especially career like that, dentistry or medicine or law, expected that you will retire from that career. You will somehow go through whatever, whether you're happy with it or not, you will go through that, and at the end, but it's really not like that. And I'm glad that many people realize that they can certainly change careers and 180 degrees if they want to, they can. Whereas many years or 30 years ago, maybe, or in our parents' time, that was not even an option. It would be considered a very reckless and crazy thing to do. I'll take a pause here now because I take in many different directions.
No, I think that I was going to say, I love that you brought up that in our parents' generation, maybe people would say, oh, this is reckless, this is crazy. But were there people even in your life when you started to share, like, I don't really feel fulfilled. I don't think this is something I want to do long term. This has served its purpose. Were there people that were like shocked or that tried to discourage you?
Hmm, shocked, probably not. And I think again, because it happened gradually. I think you know, people who know me could get it. It's quite obvious. At the same time, I was doing more and more with the podcast. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was, even initially when you first started to think about making some changes, did people on your journey start to notice changes? I guess I asked because I know that in my own personal experience, some friends are there for a season, and
Mhm.
then some people have a specific role, and there are others who understand, and you can share more of yourself and all of yourself with. So I just didn't know if anyone in your life, if any of those changes happened.
Now that you say it, I realize that the fact that all these changes have happened to me in the second, let's say, part of the life in the UK, where I started from scratch pretty much. And I mean, with socially, not from other aspects, but I didn't have any family or friends here. So that I think made a difference in the sense that I didn't really have those kind of friends, maybe the childhood friends that would say, oh, what are you doing, are you crazy? And even my parents, who eventually they were supportive with it, but initially, let's say, they were concerned, and that's a very polite word to use. But still, they were in a different country. I didn't have this kind of direct influence, so in that sense I was lucky and blessed not to have much resistance in what I wanted to do. And I was more surrounded with the new people I was surrounded with, was very supportive of following one's dream.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love the concerned, very polite way. You're from Greece. I'm originally from Serbia, so I understand parents' love. But tell me a little bit. You mentioned that you were on this personal journey, and you've talked a little bit about spiritual journey and an awakening. So, what was that like for you? What was your journey or your path? It never ends, of course, but I'm just curious on how you started to question what really fulfilled you and what the purpose of our life is.
Yes, there are many
Mhm.
facets to the story. If I answer what you mentioned about the spiritual element, what I will say is that when I was in university back in Greece, studying to be a dentist, I had my best friend at that time. We were so close together for a few years during university. He followed a spiritual calling that he had very strong, and he went to Siberia and he became a shaman. And then since that time, he has been traveling the world, teaching and healing. And when I saw his initial transformation at that time, I was 21, and I saw some things that, and because he was my best friend, I soaked up everything that he would tell me, and there was no resistance. So from that time, I had been extremely open to any idea or notion or anything that comes my way, without putting too much of the rational mind, which I am a scientist. I got a master's degree, so I have this kind of critical thinking, which is it's great. But sometimes your critical thinking allows you to understand that if I only put my intellectual or my mental capacity as a way to make a decision, for example, that is very limiting because I have my own limitations. I only know what I know. So, to make a long story short, from that young age onwards, I learned to trust my intuition for the decisions or the choices. So, if I hear, for example, and that's why I started saying it, an idea that I don't know, aliens landed on Earth, or I would never dismiss something based on my knowledge. It depends on how it will feel. And these things, I have allowed my intuition to guide me and make some decisions that I wanted. And again, I realize now, Aneta, that I have taken things again in a very different direction. I like it. Now I'm starting to get used to it. I'm not usually like this.
I love it. And I think that the conversation goes exactly where it's supposed to go. I really do
Indeed,
believe that. And
indeed.
I was actually going to ask, how do you cultivate more of that trust with your intuition? Because, especially for someone, like you said, a scientist,
Mm.
someone whose education is in critical thinking and so much in the sciences and things seen. And now you're talking about trusting your heart and tapping into your intuition. So, what are some of the practices that you have that have allowed you to grow this belief or the trust in your intuition?
It is a great question. One of the practices, and of course, that's not going to come in surprise to anyone when I say meditation. Doing meditation is, I think it's fundamental. I'm now thinking in terms of practices, because you asked me about practices that I have used personally too. And that's something that I realized that I've never spoken about on a podcast before. So that's interesting. A few years ago, I was speaking with one of my guests on the podcast, and he explained about pendulum dowsing. And I found that interesting. I asked him a few questions, and then I thought, oh, this sounds very interesting. Let me look into that. So I ordered myself a nice pendulum, and I found another one of my previous guests that I knew that she knew it very well, and I asked her, can you teach me? So we did one lesson. I was so surprised to see that I was holding the pendulum and it would change direction. It happened so quickly that I was so surprised with this. So that is something that I haven't spoken about before. It's not like I use it for decisions often, but I have used it over the last, let's say, 4 years. Yeah, about 4 years that I have got it. I have used it certainly on the big decisions. I don't use it to choose trivial things or for practice. So I have not done that for some reason. I have only used it to. And the funny thing is, Aneta, that it has always so far verified what decision felt like it was the right for me. So it's not that I don't know and then I put the pendulum out and then I will make a decision based on how it moves. No, I've already known or have a very good feeling of this is what I should do, or this is the right thing to do, or not to do. And then I have gotten just a verification for my rational mind also to be more at ease that you got that also. And then I took the decision. But what I'm trying to say is that the knowing of what is the right thing to do is already there. Maybe it's not crystal clear, but it's there
Yeah.
already.
And it's the trusting, learning to trust that we have the answers within. And so, for those that aren't as familiar, the pendulum, as I understand, you put it over your heart. Is that right? And then it would
You
spin
hold it in front of
in
you.
front of you.
It's
Okay.
yes, it moves like a pendulum, basically
Yeah.
from side to side. But when you think of something, or when you ask a question and you focus on it can change, and it does change the direction. And these are things that
Mhm.
when you start to learn what means yes, for example, what means no, or there are more sophisticated things that I've never went into those. I keep it simple for a yes or no. So basically, what I get based on the movement of it is a yes or a no. And trust me, I do it a few times with different things before. I don't just do it once. I say, okay, that's a yes. So,
Yeah, is it in tune? I love that. And you talked about meditation, which I'm a practitioner as well and facilitator. And when did you find meditation?
at that same time, when I was with my friend the shaman in my 20s, that's when I first found
Mhm.
out about meditation. And then the last few years, of course, many things have changed in terms of techniques or
Yeah.
apps or things like that. Yeah, such a wonderful topic and such a wonderful practice.
It is, and it's so interesting. Sometimes I laugh because it's free, and once you learn how to do it, you don't have to buy an app, you don't have to do all these things, but there are so many resources available, and there's so many different styles. I know some people, there's resistance because they might have in their mind that it's only one way to meditate,
Mhm.
and I think that there's just so many opportunities for people to discover what feels good for them and what works best. Do you mix up your meditation practice? Or is there a specific type of meditation that you gravitate towards?
I do mix them up, and I'm
Mhm.
now nodding when you were saying that because I have the knowing, the feeling that it would be better if I stuck to one of them. And that one in particular, because I trained on it, was Vipassana,
Mhm.
the silent meditation. So I did the 10-day silent meditation retreat. And as a technique, as a practice, to go deeper. So something beautiful you were saying in our previous conversation, to reach that level of stillness or calmness that you can see the images or you have a direct knowing of your subconscious. So I realize, and I'm answering your question now as a self reflection as well, that for a while I was practicing Vipassana meditation constantly, but then I went again into some other, let's say, easier, and I said it now, so I can't take it back. Easier, but as we know, easier is not necessarily the right thing to do. And now that you say that, it is my own action that I will take off this conversation. So I'm probably the first one to be inspired by it, and I hope the listener also, to switch back and be more consistent with Vipassana meditation, which funnily enough, Aneta, I have been thinking about it the last few days. So, yeah.
There you go. There's no judgment here. I love Vipassana. It allows me to just drop in, and it's just so beautiful. It's what I practiced first. But sometimes we change. I was just listening to Gaia has this beautiful special on Ram Dass and his teachings. And
Mhm.
the one I was listening to this morning, he says sometimes we just move from one spiritual practice to the other because we reach a certain level and then we come back to it and we're able to go deeper as a result of it. We reach a level and then we might need to shift and change something and then come back to it and be able to go and even deeper. And
Mm.
no judgment if it works. And even now, if you find yourself saying, I think I might want to go back to it, that's beautiful. Where did you do your silent meditation? Because I know there's Vipassana centers all over the world.
They are all over the world. I did it in the UK, not very far from where I lived, in a nice rural area that had some very interesting realizations, those 10 days of silence.
Yeah, I've not done one. I want to do one. My godson, he's 21. He just did one in Chicago this summer.
Hmm.
Had some very beautiful experiences, difficult. You encounter yourself over and over again and
Constantly.
constantly. But I do think that there's something about not speaking and not trying to convey our own meaning through words that allows us to go deeper back into the spiritual self and
Mhm.
less of the ego or maybe connecting to our earthly body. So you've had some time to think about it. Have you thought about what silence actually did for you personally?
What you said and what comes to mind right now is bringing you back to the present moment. For example, when we were having our meals, it was all in silence. So when you are in silence, you have, in particular, now I'm giving this example of eating, when you're not speaking while eating, you are more likely anyway to be present in the moment of what it is that you're doing right there at that moment, which is eating and putting something nutritious inside your body. So that's one example of the silence, what it did for me. It makes me realize, or more, or serves more as a reminder to be in the present moment. It's very easy to speak or to listen to something or to watch a video or whatever and be distracted from the present moment, whatever that is. And I think this is even more important at the times that our situation, and I mean our internal situation, is not peaceful. It has some unease. That thing that I'm not sure what's going on, but I don't like it, so I need to do something about it, which could be picking up Facebook or whatever each person finds to distract them. But when you have silence, complete silence, and for those days, there's nothing of that. So no matter what happens in your internal world, you can't run away from it. You look at it. And as you mentioned, it is the beautiful, transformative, very powerful, but it is difficult. I will tell you this and then I will end with this topic. At the beginning of day 3, I woke up and I thought, this is only day 3. It felt like I had been there a week already and it was only 2 days, but it is worth it. 100% worth it.
It's been calling me, so it's definitely going to be something I do. My godson had the same experience. I don't remember what day, but he said he had a day where he woke up and said, "Oh my gosh." And then he was counting like how many more days were left to go. And that's the resistance, right? That's the suffering is the resistance. And
Mm.
we've already made the decision. You're already there. You're already in the middle of it. And it's probably a reflection of how we approach so many things in life when things get a little bit difficult or maybe there's some uncertainty. But I love this topic and this idea of mindfulness and how you are become more present. How has it changed you as a podcaster to have done this experience?
That's a question no one has asked me before, so thank you for this. Now remember, and I will start with this, is that when I got back after 10 days of silence, the following morning, I picked up my microphone and I recorded a very draft for probably a couple of hours, whatever I could think about as an experience. So then I created a podcast episode, which is for me one of my favorites because for someone like you or for someone who is interested or has a calling for Vipassana, I hope that when they listen to that podcast, the calling will be transformed into going to the website and checking, okay, where can I book it and when. I think to answer your question more directly, it has changed me in the sense that I can bring it up more often. The topic of meditation, I can bring it up more often because I feel that I have some specific experience. I'm not claiming that I have mastered anything, but I have indeed done a 10-day and then a 3-day later on silent retreat. So I can bring some of the knowledge and the insights and the experience I had to a conversation, since you're asking about the podcast. Yeah, perhaps it has guided some questions that otherwise I might have not asked. So thank you for allowing me to reflect on this for the very
Yeah.
first time.
No, and also having been your guest, you are so present. And so I feel that it definitely has impacted you. I don't know what you were like before, but currently the way I experience you is being so thoughtful and being so present and being in the moment
Mm.
and being curious and interested. And I think that probably going through what you did and experiencing that helps influence that level of mindfulness in the way that you meet and your guests and the way you have conversations and ask questions. So I've been on the receiving end of it. So I've appreciated that. And I do want to go back to the book
Mm.
because we've talked a lot about actions and just why it's so important to be able to take all these learnings, take everything that we consume in books and podcasts. There's so
Yes.
much information out there. But what are some of these actionable insights that you do talk about in your book? And have any of these come from your guests on your show?
Again, a great question, and I'll answer the other way around. Most, not most, all of the book has come from to a large extent. I don't like using the word all. So let's say the majority of the book comes from the podcast. Much of it, let's say two-thirds of it, are indeed the wisdom I gained from my guests, that my guests shared in podcast episodes. About one-third of it is my own insights or what I have learned through my own personal development journey over these years. So it is a blend, but all of it has come from the podcast. It felt, as I told you earlier on when you asked me, that at some point I didn't know that I wanted to write this book. At some point I thought, that's the book I want to write. And I started. Some of the insights, I will go back to the meditation. That was one thing that I had the opportunity to speak with meditation teachers and first of all learn myself from them and put out some actionable things. For example, a technique of meditation is one of the insights, so you can use it. Morning routine, that's a very big actionable insight that I discuss and explain over there, its importance and what elements consist of it. I do not go into, I was about to say how it has influenced me, but the book has nothing like that. The book is not about the how, the why of the things or the background. Each of those 88 actionable insights is a couple of pages. It's not theory. I do a morning routine. I have done for many years. It's one of the most important elements of my day. That's it. Here are the elements. Bam. So these are some of the insights, Aneta. They have another one that comes to mind, which I will mention it since it came up, is how to find your purpose. It's a simple exercise that one of my guests described, and it's shocking how simple it is, but you have to do it. Again, it is not something that, oh, you listen to it and said, yes, I got it. Do it.
Oh, that's a big one because a lot of people struggle with
Mm.
that topic. And if you don't do the exercise to be curious about what is your purpose, or I say there's many purposes with little p's, it doesn't have to be one big purpose with a capital P. Do you remember which guest or which episode it was? Or I guess we can look into it and put it in the show notes afterwards to direct people to it. They'll have to find it. I would direct everyone to your podcast because you have so many people that you've interviewed.
Yes, there are many, so it depends on which of all you want. But yes,
Yeah,
I'm happy to share some of the links with you so we can put them in the episode description.
that's perfect. And where can folks find your book?
My book is on Amazon and Kindle, so you can get it there. As a matter of fact, I would like to offer the PDF version of the book free to
Oh my gosh.
your listeners, Aneta. So if you are listening now, you can go to agikeramidas.com/88 and we will put that on the
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you
and
for
you
being
can
so
get it for
generous.
free.
That is very generous. I encourage everyone to not only get the book, but also to subscribe to your podcast because you have so many amazing episodes and so much wisdom that comes from it. But just, of course, I love listening to you interview the guests. And yeah, of
Can I add now, since you mentioned the
course.
podcast, that I will direct, if you are listening right now, I will direct you to episode, in particular, episode 418 of Personal Development Mastery Podcast, where I had the real joy of being the host of Aneta in the show. And it was a brilliant conversation because it was all about being present or the underlying message, even though there were other topics, but the underlying message throughout the conversation was So, yes, I'm sure that you will enjoy listening to that too.
Thank you so much. I loved being on the show and just having the conversation. You're such a joy. And Agi, if people want to learn about other ways that they can work with you or what other things that you're doing within your business, what's the best way that folks can find you?
Send me a message. I'm easily accessible. I think I have a website, agikeramidas.com. The podcast has information also. But please send me a message. If my voice resonated with you with what I said, yeah, I'm very happy to connect and see where that leads us.
Oh,
But
that's
I'm always
beautiful.
happy to help.
Mm. And the final question I ask all my guests is tied to the title of the podcast, which is what does it mean to you to live the width of your life?
The width for me is how much of your potential, and I will use this word, how much of your potential you are able to fulfill during your life. So the length is obviously the years that you live, but how much of the possibilities that were, or of the things you were called to do and you had the inner desire to create or follow, how many of them did you actually do? Because these are, for me, what creates the weight, that expansion, that feeling of fulfillment, that feeling that when you reach the end of the length and you look back at your life, your last moments or minutes, what do you look at? How wide was it? Did you do what you wanted to do? Or are you full of regrets for living the same year for 50 years and calling that 50 years rather than one repeated one? So, yeah, that's the width for me, Aneta. It's a beautiful question. The width of your life is how much of your potential or of your purpose you fulfill during your length.
I love that answer. I love it. And I agree with you. We definitely want to not live the same year over and over again. Yeah. Agi, such a pleasure to have you on the show. Such a pleasure to have met you. I'm so grateful for our conversations. And I know we're going to continue to have more and just encourage everyone to reach out to you. What a generous offer. And make sure you download the book. And I wish you continued success.
Thank you so much, Aneta, for this wonderful conversation. All the very best.